Welcome to another month of reading some Victorian magazines together with me. This time around, we're going to be going through Victorian magazines from the month of May, as I am currently in the month of May. Hopefully by the time you all see this, we are still in the month of May, but if not, then hopefully we can all get in the mindset of as if it were the month of May. We're going to be going through magazines from 1842 all the way through 1925. This month we have, how many? 5 magazines to go through, and I'm going to be touching on a few interesting bits that I found when I read through all of them with you, starting with a magazine collection from the 1840s. So this time I have another bound collection of magazines. If you watched my video from April of Victorian magazine roundups, then you'll know that it was somewhat common at the time to gather up a year's worth of magazines and have them bound into a book. So this is someone's private collection of magazines, although I will say the organization is interesting. The spine says Graham's Magazine 1846. The first few hundred pages are not Graham's Magazine, not Godey's Ladies Magazine, but a whole bunch of different magazines like the Columbian Magazine from 1848, 1849, and in the back there's a whole collection of Godey's Ladies magazines from 1842. I am not 100% sure what happened with this book, if maybe it was rebound later, but I just find it such a fun quirk that this particular book is kind of a little bit helter-skelter in how it was put together, but we do have a May 1842 magazine that we can look through. So Godey's Ladies book is a magazine with fascinating history. One of my patrons commented on my last video that had the Godey's Ladies magazine in it, that there is a wonderful podcast on the history of the magazine and the main writer for it, which is absolutely fascinating. I'll leave a link in the description below. 100% recommend that you listen to that because it gives a fascinating background on what made the magazine so popular. But what was always very, very popular were these fashion plates in Godey's Ladies magazine. At this time, they were hand colored in, and I believe, according to the podcast, that there were over 150 people employed to hand watercolor in all of these fashion plates. So figure 1 is a dress of gray satin. The corsage is made 3/4 high and sloped at the front of the neck. It is tight to the bust and has 3 rows of trimming or puffing of the material of the dress. The sleeves are rather full, but taken in very far down at the top of the arm, and also from a little way below the elbow to the wrist. The bonnet is of drawn lace. It is very small, scarcely shading the face at all. I do like the interpretation to see the color of ribbon that someone might have matched to the rest of the dress. The second dress is a drawn capote of moss green or blue cape trimmed with a seine. It comes rather more over the face than the white one. The dress is of nankeen color silk. The corsage is tight and 3/4 high. The sleeves are similar to those of the other dress, gauze scarf, lace collar. So it seems to me like the fashion plate that we got colored in chose the blue color rather than the moss green. I'm sure there's other fashion plates out there that have the moss green version of this. The next is a promenade dress. Dress of cambric muslin, corsage, and long sleeves. The skirt has 3 enormous tucks, each edged with lace. White crepe lace bonnet, lined with pink and ornamented with small sprigs of flowers. Hair in bands. And the last one is a dress of striped gros de Naples. The corsage, open in the front as far as the waist, is quite tight. Sleeves long and tight, without any trimming whatsoever, except cuffs that turn up at the wrist. Hat of yellow crepe, ornamented with flowers and lace. Something that I also think is interesting to note in this book is, while there are many different stories and poems that are part of this one, we don't have any continuing stories or stories that continue for a few chapters every month, like we see in the later 1860s Godey's Ladies book. And I think it's interesting, one of the articles that I saw here is called Popular Prejudices. It opens with, "Our American writers visit foreign countries in quest of popular delusions, forgetting or disregarding the errors existing among their own countrymen." There's definitely a hint of like, this is a viewpoint that is hundreds of years old and very outdated to us. But I do find it interesting because the gist of this is people who are traveling to foreign places and want to make fun of or think it's very strange how those people might live in comparison to what you're used to seeing, have to remember that they are just as strange to other people. We go over this entire list of kind of superstitions or beliefs that are held in America, and we end with, surely when such things are believed and practiced in our own country, we need not wonder at the vampire tales of other lands. There are a few more stories in that magazine, but we have quite a few more to go through. I think we're going to move on to May of 1863 and another Godey's Ladies book. Let's move forward in time 11 years to May of 1863. We are still reading a Godey's Ladies book. Now, this first article that I read, which is called A Morning at Stewart's, I really kind of enjoyed the beginning of reading it. It's more of like a storytelling, taking you through this department store in New York City. You are an afternoon of a dull November day in the late dull autumn. We were purchasing some trifle at one of the throng counters at Stewart's, and we accidentally heard that it was the last week downtown. So it's this entire article talking about how this department store called Stewart's is moving from downtown to further uptown. The uptown location is near a place called Grace Church. I had never heard of Stewart's before, but it is historically important because it is the first department store in the United States. And the reason why when I was reading this article it hit me so closely is because I walked by that place every day for 4 years. Where I went to school for my undergrad was just a few blocks over, and this is a building that I always admired when I walked by. I actually used to play basketball in the basement of that building because they had a court there. I don't know how to describe it, but when it dawned on me that that's what, because when they started talking about Grace Church and occupied it between 9th and 10th Street, I was like, I know a Grace Church between 9th and 10th Street. They're talking about that department store, the first department store in the United States. So let me read you some of the excerpts of what they talk about in this department store, what it looks like, and what you can buy. The building itself, like its predecessor, is of white marble and looms up purely at the angle of Broadway, occupied by Grace Church between 9th and 10th Streets. We will enter on 9th Street and then have a gradual interior view. We find ourselves instantly in the midst of business. This entrance or lobby is occupied by the package department, where many busy hands are checking, tossing, and bearing off for delivery the hundreds of neatly enveloped parcels. We are passing onto the staircase of the 10th Street side. Emerging from the staircase, we come at once upon the busy scene. This is the main saloon, entered directly from the street and lighted on all sides by walls of plate glass windows, the light tempered by plain blue shades. To return to the staircase rising to the last division, it is broad, with shallow steps and a plain but handsome balustrade. On the landing, halfway up, we pause for a view of the busy sparkling scene below. The light and tasteful frescoes on the wall and ceiling, the gilded chandeliers with grand glass globes, the graceful Corinthian columns, all of iron, the gaily dressed, restless, ever-changing throng, like a waving tulip bed, or the glittering of a kaleidoscope. That, I think, offers a beautiful look into basically a department store. As we continue to leaf through the rest of this month, there are quite a few stories, and this time, 11 years later, we do have some stories that are continued across the months. We start to get to more of the fashion plate, so we have some novelties for May, of which I think most interesting one is called A Bonnet Shade, in England called An Ugly, which we think a very appropriate title for it. It is, however, very convenient for traveling and a great protection for the face. They call it very ugly, but very practical. We have some more styles of jackets. We have a Jerome coat, which is a pretty sack coat trimmed with velvet bands, as to give something to the appearance of a polka jacket. And something that I find fascinating about polka jackets is they're some of the earliest knitted sweater patterns that I can find is knitted patterns for polka jackets. And now we have some more of these fiber crafts, which is some of my favorite parts of these magazines. We have a crochet collar, a lovely glass bead mat, and then another name for marking. If your name is Betty, we have a name for marking that you can use here. But what I'm particularly interested in is seam knitting for sofa pillows. I don't know if you've noticed, but at home on my couch, my pillows have been bare since the day that I bought them. But if you stick around to the end of this video, I am going to use this pattern for seam knitting of sofa pillows to cover at least one of my couch cushions. And then we get through some more receipts or recipes, as well as going through the editor's table, where last month we got some very sage advice of not marrying your cousins. It also appears that they have to continue reiterating this point because we have SK, we do not approve of the marriage of such near relations. So once again, please consider how near your relations are before you marry them. So I think that's what I'll go over for 1863. I have some wonderful things that I want to try out, but I'll definitely be trying out the knitting pattern. I think next we are going to jump ahead quite a few more decades to May of 1900. This magazine is the Delineator. I have quite a few copies of the Delineator that you might have seen in previous videos of mine. We have some dainty waists here for early summer and a advertisement for an R&G corset, which are the corsets that do not stretch. She looks very relaxed and has a very beautiful corset cover on. We have some effective street gowns. And I have to say, it's interesting to see, I feel like, between these two gowns, kind of the difference in the blouse front style. One of them you really more have that pigeon breast front, and the other one is a little bit tighter. And I do like the effect. I like the colors and the effect of the one on the left, the red one, a little bit more personally, but they're both absolutely beautiful. I really like this page. It's not colored in, but we have a whole series of gowns for commencement and graduation. We have some ladies' afternoon toilets as well as dressy Eton suits. Then we have the ladies' reception gown. I love the pattern on this fabric. Again, the ads in these magazines I think are also so fascinating. Here we have something new for Delineator readers, the Campbell Bust Perfector. But this one is interesting because we have a bust protector when worn without a corset is efficient bust support and will be hailed with delight by the athletic woman who wants the waist entirely free. We also have an ad for the Singer sewing machine, which seems quite extreme. It seems like someone's house and city were devastated in a tornado, and when she went back to the ruins, the only thing that was left standing in good order was her Singer sewing machine, which is just a very impactful ad, in my opinion. 1900 was the year of the Paris exhibition, and it just has an entire article on the charms of Paris. And I see for the first time pictures of the Delineators or Butterick's Paris establishment. You see pictures of the storefront in Paris. You can see dresses, pictures of dresses made from the Delineator or Butterick patterns. Along with the pictures, we also have some articles. There will be many thousands of American and English visitors to Paris, and those who may wish information regarding the best places to make purchases of any character, how to spend time at their disposal to the best possible advantage, are invited to make use of our bureau, which is within a few minutes of a walk of the principal entrance to the expo. Visitors are also urged to make our office a convenience for writing letters, resting, or meeting friends. Those who have no definite idea of their address in advance can have their letters sent in our care. And I have to say, if I were to rest somewhere, if I were on some long travels, this does look like quite a nice place to rest. Moving on to things that make me even more exciting, we get to the fibre crafts section, which is the art of knitting. We have some lace patterns for edges and insertions that match. Then we keep going to an interesting section in this magazine, illustrated cookery. So we have a tomato salad, which is basically gelatinized tomato served with olives and mayo. I just can't imagine the flavor and texture of, so that's maybe something I want to try in the future. But one thing that does sound really good to me, and I will be attempting, for coconut ice in orange cups. I'm very excited to try that one. It sounds absolutely delicious. And as we are getting more into summer, we have some up-to-date bathing requisites. We have ladies' bathing costumes, as well as knickerbocker suits. You do have a few where you just have basically what looks like rompers with separated leg pieces and bloomers, kind of like bicycling outfits, without the skirts on top. And of course, in 1900, a lot of the advertisements has something to do with bicycles. I am currently still working on knitting an entire 1890s bicycling ensemble. So these advertisements are very much in the realm of that bicycling ensemble that I'm working on. Moving on from May of 1900, we go forward just 1 year to the Delineator of 1901. I do love the yellow gown that's on this cover. Again, we have some more beautiful fashion plates. Blue is one of my favorite colors. Dainty gown for early summer. The blue one on the right is just absolutely gorgeous. We have some novel shirt waists or blouses. The one on the bottom left looks like a paisley print to me. Not something I would typically picture for the time period. And then, of course, we move on to my favorite part of this magazine, which is the crocheting or different fiber crafts. We have a chatelaine bag in bead crochet. We also have a star center point for the table. This magazine was a little bit more sparse with the fiber crafts. And then of course, what I very much paid attention to is all of the advertisements. It's an entire page of bicycle advertisements. We have Tribune bicycles, better health, clear brain, good digestion, and happier lives. You also have the Columbia bicycles, which is the standard of the world. You have the Monarch bicycles, the College Athlete Rambler bicycles, and you can see the college athletes wearing some sweaters. Rambler bicycles, they're for those men and women who ride for health and pleasure. So you got a lot of really good sales here for the different bicycles that you could buy in May of 1901. And then this is an ad. I thought that's actually kind of genius. Green's sewing machine attachments, where you can attach a clamp to the end of your treadle sewing machine that spins together with a wheel, and it allows you to polish silver, gold, and plated ware, shine any kind, size, or color of shoes, sharpen your scissors, knives, and needles without soiling or injuring your sewing machine. I don't know, I thought that was really neat. I really wonder how well this worked, and it would be really cool to find one, but I'm sure that it might be a little hard to find, although I would really love to try it out. So that was a brief look at May of 1901, and we have just one more magazine to look at, and we are going to jump ahead in the future by 24 years. For 1925, we are also looking at a delineator magazine, but you might notice that the size is quite different. This one's a little bit harder for me to read practically just because it is so large, so I'm going to do my best to support it and show you what I'm looking at as well. One of the articles that I found interesting, a segment on lengthening women's lives. This article talks about how the weakest link in the chain of American health is the woman in the home. You have many different industries that require physical examinations, so men who are working in those industries are examined physically, more women who are employees, and so the wage earning women are also being checked as part of these industries, but the women in her home are the last to be checked. Here we also have a little delineator, so you could tear or cut out these pages and fold them up and have a mini magazine for your children. And rather than the fashions being up front in these magazines, they come a little bit later. So these magazines are more fronted by articles on health and wellness, some stories with pictures, and now we are kind of in the middle of the magazine getting to the fashion. So we have the new in New York, and then a whole page of fashion outfits, and I love all the different patterns here for the fabrics as well. On the next page we go more into dresses and a color plate page. I very much like the deep blue dress here. This red one really stands out. It's almost like a pinafore style, but very 1920s, where the waist is dropped so low, so the pinafore's front is so down low. All the hats are fantastic too. After quite a few more pages of designs, including some designs for pajamas, which look, first of all, super comfy here on the left, but also very like cute and frilly. We have full page ad for Campbell soup. Those of us who know the Campbell soup logo are very, very familiar with that gold seal in the middle of it. That gold seal is from the French Exposition in 1900. So another thread that kind of ties through these different magazines is we heard so much about the French Expo in the May 1900 number, and now we're kind of seeing how that expo continues through 1925 and even today on Campbell's Soups. The French Expo is also super fascinating. They had a moving walkway through the town, which I would have loved to ride. There's even like video footage of people using this moving walkway. Another interesting bit on this one, a menu for May. So this is like a sample week's worth of food, what people would eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. On Sunday, your breakfast is fresh pineapple, French toast, crisp bacon, marmalade, milk, and coffee. For lunch, you have baked cheese dreams, head lettuce, French dressing, strawberries with cream, white cake, and cocoa. For dinner, you have broiled steak, pan gravy, new potatoes and cream, buttered new peas, radishes, pineapple and strawberry shortcake with whipped cream, milk, and coffee. This all sounds very filling, but it does sound delicious. Now, as we talked about before, in May of 1901, we have that the first state is requiring license plates for your cars, and now cars are becoming more ubiquitous, and in 1925 we are getting advertisements for car seats. But They're quite different from the car seats that we know today. Thousands of mothers keep baby comfy with this very interesting contraption. Tuck baby snugly in the convenient Gordon motor bassinet. Mothers too may ride in comfort or drive if they choose. Absorbs the shocks baby would receive if held. No mention of safety, just the fact that you can drive hands-free without holding your baby. Definitely a different time. And I think that does it for reading our 5 magazines for the month of May, spanning 1842 to 1925. Now I want to go and try out some of the things from the different magazines. I am going to start by trying out the May 1900 recipe for the orange coconut ices. This recipe for coconut ice in orange cups only has 5 ingredients: oranges, lemons, coconut flakes, sugar, and water. First, you cut a slice from the top of the orange and scoop out the pulp and juice. Then, with a pinking iron, which is what is traditionally used in dressmaking, which is why I kind of find this recipe really neat. I don't have one, so I'm just gonna get creative with it. And that's what you're gonna serve the coconut ice in. Okay, so let's start by taking the juice out of 4 oranges, 1 lemon, boiling that and putting it in the freezer together with the coconut so that we have that freezing while we decorate the shells. I'm gonna take the time to carve out our lovely orange cups. I will do my best to make this look as pretty as I can.
Please excuse this voiceover. Unfortunately, my microphone wasn't really working in this scene and you could barely hear me, but here I am trying to explain that it is now time for me to try out the 1863 knitting pattern for pillowcase covers. I didn't understand the instructions very well at first, so I made quite a few samples until I finally came up with one that I think somewhat resembles the diagram, but I also decided that instead of covering the entire pillowcase, which would take a long time for me after already spending so much time trying to figure the pattern out, that I would kind of put just 1 stripe on the pillowcase instead. So I sat down and got to knitting.
Finished knitting the decorative stripe for my pillow cushion. Well, actually pillow cushions. I ended up making 2 because I do have 2 size pillows, 1 smaller one, 1 larger one, so I wanted a matching pair between the 2 sets. I also cut out some fabric, which I'm going to use for the rest of the pillowcase. Let's finish this off and show you the final finished product of my pillowcases. And my new pillowcases are done! These 2 were definitely a bit of a puzzle to put together. I decided why not make the other 2 to match as well. Look how cute these are! I love them so much! Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed kind of flipping through some of these older magazines with me. I'm going to be continuing them for the next few months and seeing if you guys still like them. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, subscribe if you enjoy historical fiber crafts, sewing, knitting, crocheting, anything like that, vintage, historical, some modern, and more chatty videos like this. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you all again very, very soon. Bye!